There are more definitions under cottage industry for what is a cottage industry than there is for a home-based business, just by looking in Webster's dictionary. The other thing that you have done is you have taken a piece of property that somebody owns as a taxpayer in this town and made it useless to them by saying that only if it abuts their residence can they utilize it for any purpose. There are huge amounts of people who own property in this town that does not abut their properties where they reside. And it should be their choice as taxpayers whether or not that they decide to do something on that property or not. Okay? Home-based business means it's in the home. That's what a home-based business is. It's based within the home. A cottage industry is not. A cottage industry can happen in your backyard. It can happen in a barn. It can happen in an open field. Okay? There's a big difference when you start looking at taking the words cottage industry out of this document and by making the property that you wish to do business on abutting. Now, if the fear is that some outside non-Brookfield resident is going to come in here and open up a business on a piece of property, then by all means add that you must be a Brookfield resident in order to operate a cottage industry or a home-based business or a bed and breakfast in the town of Brookfield. Only open it up to the town residents, the people who live here and pay taxes. But don't remove the words cottage industry and don't make it a requirement that it has to abut the house. This document restricts our current document in our zoning and makes it harder for somebody to do something on a piece of property that they own and pay taxes on. And at this point, I'll be quiet until further notice.
Okay, Gary.
Well, okay, this is my firm belief that if we're going to have a public hearing and public commentary, that any members of the board that wish to make comments should excuse themselves from the board, become part of the public, and someone else should be appointed to their position while they make public comment. Otherwise, we are carrying on a planning board meeting with the public involved. That's pretty much what we're doing. However, if that is the way we're going to do this, then I will get involved on that level. I was kind of waiting for the meeting to be closed so that I can open my mouth with my opinion. But I guess I'm going to do it now. I've said this before. I was involved in this cottage industry, home-based occupation. I was the first one actually given the assignment a number of years ago when I had an accident and I wasn't able to continue. Anytime you have a dispute, and that's what laws do, they create disputes if someone goes against the law. And we adjudicate that dispute in a court of law in the United States. The United States judicial system uses Webster's dictionary as its glossary of terms unless case law has not redefined but elaborated upon a definition in Webster's. That's how it works. Anyway, in this particular instance, it hasn't in the state of New Hampshire. I don't know about the rest of the United States, but anyway, the point is that cottage industry has a definition which is far broader than a home-based business. I happen to agree with Cliff on this. The cottage industry does open the door for more things than a home-based business. Now, I know there's people that don't want to see anything happen in town at all, and hey, you know, up to a point I do agree with them. However, this country is facing enormously difficult economic times. Everybody here knows it. It's no myth. I've been saying it for years, and it's really coming home to roost these days. And people that have a lot of money really don't worry too much about the guy that doesn't have any if he goes belly up and the mortgage people come and foreclose on his property because they got theirs. And I'm the same way. I'm not too worried about the guy, although I feel bad for him. But under no circumstances am I going to sit up here as a legislator and start telling people, sorry, buddy, you're getting foreclosed on because I don't like your cottage industry. I'm not doing it. That's the way it is. Now, we're in for it, and everybody here knows it. You can all say poo-poo to you, but everybody knows it. And if people have to survive, and that's within reason, we already have laws here. Nobody's going to open a Dunkin' Donuts, and if we start nitpicking at people on what they can do on their property, for instance, if you have a lot that's across the street from you and it's down the road a couple of 100 yards, and that's your cottage industry and a garage you happen to have on that property, and we're going to say no, to somebody and they get foreclosed on, I'm going to feel happy about that? I don't think so. Now, I might say we should make a resident of the town be a resident of the town if they want to operate a cottage industry under the property. I think we have the right to legally do that. Only the town attorney can tell us that. We have to ask those questions. Maybe you can't. Maybe you can't be specific to residents of the town. Maybe you can't be. Those laws I'm not aware of. But I do know cottage industry and home-based business are miles apart. And as soon as you remove cottage industry, you shut the door on a lot of stuff. I'm not doing it. The rest of you have to vote. My vote is going to be that. And I needed to say that. Now we were going to wait till later.
Are there any other public comments who haven't had a chance to go already? Everybody's had a chance. Okay. Who raised your hand first? You did.
I was just going to say that the words professional trades has been removed as well.
Okay. Rob?
So the last two comments, the comments from Clifton and from Gary, are exactly the reason that I proposed this. Because these guys, they're smart guys, they're passionate about the town, and I really appreciate that. But they are not reading the existing zoning the way that a court would. You read exactly the few words that are relevant here. Customary, permitted uses.
Is this the existing zoning?
Existing,
yes. Okay.
Customary home occupations such as. What is permitted are customary home occupations. And our zoning gives some examples of that, which includes recognized professions and cottage industries and the trades. Right? That's the way that a court is going to interpret our zoning. So my intent, and if I got the wording wrong, let's fix it.
I think you did a good
But
job.
my intent was to say, it doesn't have to be just a recognized profession, or a trade, or a cottage industry. It's those plus anything else that anyone else can dream of.
Do you mind if we include cottage industries back in there?
I do, because I think that clouds the issue, because look at the way you guys interpret it. You guys interpret it as
Let's calm down.
Should have brought my dictionary.
Wait.
Just a minute.
It gets confusing as soon as you put in a couple examples. Somebody's going to interpret that as being the definition of every example, right? That starts to limit it. If you make it so that it is a business that's at the home, and if we want to, we can put a definition that says home-based business, a business that is at the home. And I'm fine with that if we want to change it and to clarify that even more. My intent in writing this, and if I missed the mark, let's fix it. My intent in writing this was to include everything that is in the such as that we've got already, plus anything that hasn't been considered here. Now, Clifton had a second point, which was about whether or not you have to live, if it's home-based business, has to be at your home. And I think that this is customary home occupations, which is the thing I'm rewriting, is how to define customary home occupations. A customary home occupation that's not at your home, that makes no sense to me.
That's why cottage industries are, right?
No, it's not.
Rob has the floor. Let him finish.
It's still is an example. A cottage industry is an example of a customary home occupation in our current zoning. That is an example of customary home occupation as that sentence is written. And you can't get away from that. And I think that the implication, if we went the route that Clifton suggested, and make it so that it clearly states that you don't have to live there in order to run a home-based business, then it's no longer a home business, it's just a business. And what we're then saying is that anyone who owns a lot in Brookfield can open a business there. Now you're talking about a doctor's office, a recognized profession, great, it's a great thing to have here in town. But you're talking about somebody who's opening up a doctor's office because they have a lot of piece of land. They don't have to live here. It doesn't have to be their home. It's not, I would say that's not a home-based business anymore. And that is an extremely large change to our zoning that I'm not comfortable with proposing that right now. What I'm proposing is, make it abundantly clear that anything that's allowed at the appropriate level of size. And the appropriate level of size is going to vary based on the circumstances. That's the number 6 we were talking about earlier.
Okay. Just a moment. We are having a lot of deliberative kind of comments here. So if there's any more public comment, then we'll get to that. Otherwise, it's time to move into deliberations. So, your point of order was?
My point of order was exactly that. When we start negotiating the
Right.
verbiage of the,
That's
of
too
the
far out of
article
bounds.
presented for the public,
Yeah.
we start going into deliberative session.
Right.
And therefore, we haven't presented a finished document to the public if we're talking about altering
Mhm.
the verbiage. We may want to just put this to a working document and reconvene to deliberate before representing it to the public if we're going to negotiate any alterations.
Are there any original public comments that have not already been brought up here? Any points that are?
Ernie
not-
had his hand up.
Yes, I'm sorry, Ernie. Yes, go ahead.
If I can, I would address it to Rob, but as
You
I
can.
understand the proposal, if I have a cottage industry, I can work something out of my house. I can work there, I can work at a contiguous piece of land. But if it's in another location, I can't do it. I can't support that, that's all. I don't.
All right.
Our zoning doesn't allow that, but
Okay, so if there are any non-deliberative type comments, is this a non-deliberative type comment? Yes.
I just want to point out that this is the third meeting where this planning board has discussed and is going to consider changes to this document. So I think that it's wrong to apply this premature for us to be having a public hearing when we've already had 2 meetings where this has been discussed at length and has been open to any proposed changes. Nobody at any point in those meetings has been suggesting that this is a finished document and that we shouldn't have any changes. I think the chairman did the right thing. We went through 2 meetings with no proposed amendments. No substantive discussion, no substantive disagreement with what was there. I think it's very reasonable for Tom to bring it to a public hearing. I think it was.
Also, I agree with you, but when the 2 of you started negotiating the verbiage of the document, therefore we're going into deliberations.
And that's fine. I'm just saying that, I thought I heard the implication that Tom had done the wrong thing and bring it to a public hearing. I think that it was very reasonable given the general consensus that we saw at the last couple of meetings that there weren't significant amendments being proposed.
That I agree with you absolutely wrong with that.
Okay.
When you start negotiating, that changes
Are there
aspects.
any comments regarding the nature or wording of the proposal? Hearing none. Let me just make sure I read the rules right here. So the rules say, chair shall invite public from the comment. When there is no more comment from the public, the chair shall close the public comment and proceed to the next segment. So is there any more public comment? No. Okay. The hearing is closed. You got the time there, George? Thank you. Okay, at this point, next rule says, all members of the public, okay, that's that, okay. Okay, hearing is closed. Okay, at this point, Rule J, the board shall deliberate to see whether it wants to incorporate the public comments or to adopt the public, or to adopt the excuse me. The board shall deliberate to see whether it wants to incorporate the public comments or adopt the document or amendments. Eddie, please, you have the floor.
Just a quick observation. It was just at the last meeting that we accepted it as a working document, so we haven't had time as a board. I'm not discussing prematurity of public hearings. I'm just saying we haven't had a lot of time to deliberate and work with this. So that's my comment.
And just to reiterate what I said before, the reason I scheduled the meeting for today was that if there was any hope for this to even get to the voters in March, we had to have a first hearing today. And that's not an endorsement saying this is 100% ready. That's up to the board to decide what you guys want to do with it. If you want to tear it apart and start over again, it's up to you. I'm sure Rob would not like that. But, that's just the process. That is the process. Yes, please go ahead.
I want to apologize to everybody here, that's all, for not being in the last 2 or 3 meetings. I've been in Florida. My dad died a week and a half ago, and I've been down there helping my mother and him get straightened out. They got some problems, and I apologize for not participating in the last 3 meetings because I've been pretty much taken up with family matters. So
There's no need to apologize.
well, I'm supposed to
no
be
need
here.
whatsoever.
I ran for it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's it.
Oh, okay. Booney?
No need to
Mr.
apologize.
Can I ask what the timeline looks like for March, given this Rob's work?
Okay. George, can you refresh me on that? Because I don't have the calendar to look at in front of me.
I could look it up.
So the board, I'm getting feelings sitting here listening, needs to work with the document as presented, the working document in
Well, that's for the board to decide. That's what these deliberations